Previously on Birds of the Air Travel. We've got some exciting jungle adventures coming up, and today we are headed out to our next stop in San Ignacio. After arriving in Belize City, we picked up our rental car and started driving, trading in the blue waters of San Pedro for the deep rainforest that were waiting to be explored. We've made a couple of stops on our way to San Ignacio. Our first destination of the day was at Belize Ecolution Adventures, where we were greeted by the owner Shane and his puppy. Shane led us out into the forest in search of black howler monkeys and taught us about many plants and animals along the way. We could see worn-down trails snaking along the ground that had been made by leafcutter ants. These ants can carry loads up to 20 times their own body weight. The collected leaves are used to cultivate a fungus that the ants eat. So these ants are actually farming, which I think is really remarkable.
So this is believed, besides tamarind, to be the highest level of antioxidant in this part of the world. And so we started to grow them a few years ago here in our community. And it's the worst smell you'll ever smell in your life. Don't be mad at me, okay? I gotta let you smell it. It's not that bad today.
Ooh, I see what you mean now.
Yeah.
Eventually, Shane was able to locate a family of howler monkeys and coax them over so we could get a closer look.
It's right here. It's right in my face. Actually, this is a female. Notice they went back over on that end. So they were basically coming just to greet us. This is their natural habitat, but all of this is their territory, so they could be absolutely anywhere.
Howler monkeys are amongst the loudest animals in the world, and we got to hear just how loud they can be firsthand. This tour was very educational and also a lot of fun, and afterwards we still had time for one more stop before nightfall. Now we're at the Belize Zoo, which is supposed to be one of the best small zoos in the entire world. It was rainy when we first arrived at the zoo, but that didn't faze us or the animals. All of the residents of the zoo are native to Belize, and there were signs telling us the varying situations that caused them to have to be rescued. The enclosures the animals lived in blended into the forest perfectly, giving a good approximation of their natural habitats. It didn't take long for us to realize that the Belize Zoo is absolutely worthy of its claim of being the best small zoo in the world. I don't think I've ever visited a zoo where the animals were as active as they are here, which made our experience really fun. Archie, the northern tamandua anteater, was probably my favorite animal at the zoo. Oh, you're so cute! It was awesome to get to see the zoo's cats. There are 5 species of wildcat that live in Belize: mountain lions, ocelots, margays, jaguarundis, and of course jaguars. The Belize Zoo houses individuals of each of the 5 species, but I was the most excited to get to see the jaguars. The last species we visited happened to be the national animal of Belize, the tapir. The Central American tapir is actually the largest species of mammal native to Central and South America. We spent so long at the zoo that it was dark out by the time we finally made it to our jungle lodge and checked in to get some sleep. The next morning, we got a better look at our cabana and the surrounding forest, and then we promptly got into the car and left the country. We are going to go to Guatemala for the day to visit the Mayan city of Tikal. We can't actually take our car over, so we've booked a private driver to take us there. That's going to be our whole day today. Our guide Omer met us once we'd exited Belize, and we started the 2-hour drive to Tikal National Park, stopping along the way to try some local food and tea. Omer told us that it would take 3 days to explore the entire Tikal archaeological site, which was previously known as Yachmutul, and was an important urban center in Mayan civilization during the Classic period.
Those circle stones that you're seeing over there, those are original. And that's where they're gonna put an offering over there. It could be like a corn. If you're a farmer, if you're a hunter, the best meat that you can get, you can leave it over there.
One of the coolest parts of visiting Tikal was getting to climb to the top of its pyramids and other structures. We've visited Mayan sites in the past, but had never been to one that still allowed this. In addition to all of its excavated buildings, Tikal also had a lot of structures that haven't been uncovered, leaving them to look like oddly shaped hills in the middle of the forest. The most impressive part of the tour was our visit to the Central Plaza, which was surrounded by the North and Central Acropolises and Temples 1 and 2. Temple 1, or the Jaguar Temple, was the clear focal point of the scene and the only structure in the plaza that we couldn't climb. Omer gave us some free time to explore on our own, so we wandered around the 2 Acropolises and then climbed up a steep wooden staircase to see the view from the top of Temple 2. After we met back up with Omer, he led us along a trail to El Mundo Perdido, or the Lost World.
You can still see and appreciate the steps. The side of the steps that goes all the way up.
Here, we climbed a set of wooden stairs to the top of another pyramid, stopping halfway up to look at a spider monkey. When we finally got to the top, we found the most amazing view looking out over the rainforest. The sea of treetops was broken up by the tops of pyramids 1, 2, 3, and 4, piercing through the canopy and meeting with the sky. This same iconic view was used in a scene in Star Wars Episode 4. After descending back to the ground, we hiked out to the park entrance where we enjoyed a delicious lunch, then rode back to the border where we said goodbye to Omer. Alright, so we're back from Guatemala. That was a really fun tour. Tikal was so beautiful. Now we're back at our lodge, Mariposa Jungle Lodge, and we are hiking their trail. It's a 40-kilometer property, and there's a trail that goes all the way around the outside of it. We saw some of Belize's smaller creatures on our hike, like this yellow-spotted tropical night lizard, and another parade of ants. We even got to hear the call of a keel-billed toucan, the national bird of Belize. This is the lodge's bird tower, so I imagine we're going to be coming up here several times to see what we can see. After our hike, we spent the evening hanging out around our cabana and listening to the sounds of the rainforest come alive after dark. Here's Vince opening an avocado that we found on the ground and we're planning to eat. Wow, that looks nice and ripe. Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Today we're attempting to go to the ancient Mayan city of Caracol. Now, we've been told that the road out there can be a little bit dicey and we don't have four-wheel drive, so we're going to give it a try. If it doesn't work out, we're going to go to Mountain Pine Ridge, and there's a lot of waterfalls and caves there we can explore, and we can go swimming in the waterfalls. The drive out to Caracol was actually a lot of fun. We got out of the car a handful of times to admire the beautiful scenery along the way, and the road itself was never bad enough to concern us. I will say that we were really lucky to have relatively dry weather during our stay, and this road may have been harder to drive on if it had been wet. Kind of as expected, the road was not as bad as we've been told. If you're used to driving on a dirt road, you probably won't have any problems. Yeah, it was actually a really beautiful drive. We're here exactly at opening. There's nobody else here yet, but we looked at the guest book, and this entire page of names, it's basically for the past 2 weeks, only like 40 visitors have been here. I assume that when this highway gets finished, it's gonna get a lot more traffic out here. Caracol felt like a special place from the very moment that we arrived. The adventurous drive had already put us in a good mood, and we entered the site with a spirit of exploration. Along the path, we discovered structures with huge buttress trees growing on top of them, interesting insects, and a group of collared aracaris, a small species of toucan. This is really cool. The ruins are intermingled with the jungle. Big tree roots are still growing over them. We're literally the only people here. You can still climb up pretty much anything. It feels very exploratory. Feels a bit like you're Indiana Jones. The steps on these things are super tall. They were not made for short people. Our guide yesterday told us that the more elite nobility in the Mayan culture were taller because they just had more resources, more food, more water. Only the upper class people were allowed to climb up this stuff. I have to admit that my legs were beginning to feel like jello now that it was our second day of climbing up knee-high stairs. But Vince and David were just as energetic as ever. The pyramid we were climbing up was called Sky Palace, and we didn't know it yet, but it's actually the tallest man-made structure in Belize. Standing right at its base, we couldn't actually see the top, so as we were climbing up, we kept thinking we were finally near the end, only to level out on a step just to find another tier towering above us. When we finally did reach the top step, we found 3 temples, so we made one last push to the top of the center temple and then basked in the triumphant view as I worried that my legs might fall off. It took a lot less time to get down from Sky Palace than it had taken to climb up. Back on the ground, we clapped at the pyramid to hear our claps echoed back at us off of the limestone. There was still plenty of Caracol to be explored, which of course meant that there were plenty more stairs to walk up and down. But it's not every day that you get an entire ancient Mayan city all to yourself, so I sacrificed my quadriceps in the name of adventure. We left Caracol much later than expected, and on our way out we stopped to watch a bunch of butterflies gathered in a damp area of earth. Then we backtracked down the dirt road which led us directly to our next destination, Mountain Pine Ridge Forest Reserve. Caracol was so cool. We stayed there way longer than we thought we would. We have made it to Mountain Pine Ridge a bit later than we expected, but we are starting out at Rio Frio Cave. Rio Frio would be the first of several caves we would visit over the next few days. Every cave we saw was unique in some way. Rio Frio stood out because its large picturesque entrance and exit were within sight of each other. The cave was beautiful, but I was more excited about the next 2 stops because they were both swimming holes. Jumping into the cool water at Rio on Pools was a refreshing relief from the hot weather and humidity. I actually tallied it up, and there was only one day on this entire 2-week trip that we didn't go for any sort of swim. It was just so hot out that we took any opportunity we got to jump into a body of water. Rio on Pools ended up being just as much fun as I'd imagined. The rocky riverbed in this area creates a series of natural swimming pools and water slides with waterfalls cascading over them. The dramatic rocky landscape invites exploration, and we kept scrambling to the top of boulders only to find another beautiful spot to go check out. We even found a deep enough pool for jumping. We stayed in our bathing suits for the short drive and hike to Big Rock Falls, which is widely regarded as one of the best waterfalls in Belize. Water cascades 150 feet from the top of Big Rock Falls until it reaches a deep natural pool at the fall's base. It's a perfect spot for swimming, cliff jumping, or just basking on the rocks that surround the pool. I wanted to get up underneath the waterfall, but my first attempt failed because the current was so strong that I just got swept backward. But then Vince figured out an extremely graceful way to get past the strong current, so I followed his lead. We left Mountain Pine Ridge just as the sun was setting, satisfyingly worn out from a long day packed with adventure. This morning we're heading out to Caves Branch for an adventure cave tour. We stopped for breakfast on our way to Caves Branch, which is near Belize's capital city of Belmopan. This restaurant had kittens, and I swear I took nearly as much video of this kitten as I did on the cave tour later. Yeah, you can tell by this point of the trip I was really starting to miss me and Vince's cat. When we arrived at Ian Anderson's Caves Branch Jungle Lodge, it quickly became apparent that we'd signed up for a really fun tour. We immediately got outfitted with thick camo pants for crawling around inside the cave, and then hopped aboard a military utility truck for the drive out there. We followed our guides, Telma and Junior, on a short hike through the forest to the mouth of the cave, where we donned our helmets and headlamps.
For these formations to develop what we know as a cubic inch, it can take over 100 to 1,000 years.
There were both insect and fruit-eating bats residing near the cave entrance, but as we got further from the daylight, the bats dissipated. In their place were crabs, cave crickets, and scorpion spiders, or whip scorpions. These dudes may look intimidating, but they're actually harmless, as you can see here. Our journey deeper into the cave led us over some amazing formations, and Telma stopped often to relay fascinating information about the cave's wildlife, geology, and history.
So she feed on flies. Whatever fly get caught here, when the fly trying to escape, she can feel the vibration, see, of the fly trying to escape. Then she comes over, she's moving, as you can see. She's gonna come over and pull the line, like a fishing line. And then she feed from the inside part of the fly. So the Mayans were using these caves around 250 to 980.
What would they put in a pot that big?
Big shots.
Oh.
Hard to tell, to be honest. Most of the pots that they bring in here, they will break them after every ceremony.
Oh.
So you mainly get to see pieces of pots scattered everywhere because they believe that there are evil spirits inside the caves.
These glittering crystal stones were by far the prettiest formation we saw. I couldn't stop shining my light on them so I could see them sparkle.
Take a look at what we have here. Just rubbing a rock against another rock, we get some beautiful colors.
Getting our rock face paint was a turning point in the tour. From here, we were nearly ready to enter the section of the cave where we would have to don harnesses for climbing and abandon anything that we didn't want getting wet. We waded waist deep into the river, passing by more glittering flowstone and eventually ducking underneath it to enter another passageway. This signified the entrance to the fun part of the cave, and we began climbing over boulders, growing nearer to the sounds of crashing water up ahead. There were a couple of small waterfalls to climb over before we reached the biggest one, where Junior was waiting to belay us. Once at the top, we were committed to jumping back down, but we still had some ground to cover before then. As we climbed higher through the cave, water splashed in our faces, making it hard for us to see where we were putting our hands and feet. Every new obstacle we climbed would become another jump on the way down. After we reached our turnaround point, gravity did most of our work for us. There were several small jumps and a couple of down climbs, but the big jumps were by far the most fun. When we got back to the biggest waterfall, I felt my nerves acting up, and after I made the leap, adrenaline washed over me. I felt shaky for a few minutes afterwards as I calmed down from the anticipation. Junior had run ahead and vanished out of sight right after our final jump, and when we neared the spots where we'd left our backpacks, we found out why. He had set up a candlelit lunch for us. Once all the food was ready, we turned off our lights and ate only by the candlelight. After lunch, we hiked back to the entrance of the cave, then rode in the truck all the way back to the lodge. Bonnie and David snuck in a quick nap during the drive. The cave tour was so much fun. We were trying to figure out what we were gonna do this afternoon, and we went to this chocolate place just to try to get ice cream, but it ended up being way more awesome than we imagined. When we walked into Lamanai Chocolate Company, we were greeted with chocolate samples. Right around the time that we'd finished trying every kind of chocolate they had on offer, a family of howler monkeys paid the property a visit, so we went out to watch them swinging through the treetops. Eventually, we got back to the business of ordering some of Lamanai's handmade ice cream. I got peanut butter ice cream, and then I doubled down by ordering an affogato. We are probably just gonna finish off the day here, which is the Inland Blue Hole. The Inland Blue Hole was somewhat less exciting than the Great Blue Hole, which we dived in the previous week, but it was a refreshing and peaceful place to enjoy a swim. We followed a river that was attached to the Blue Hole, and it led to this little cave that we could swim into. Right around the park's closing time, a heavy rain started pouring down on us, so we retreated back to the car and drove back to the Mariposa Jungle Lodge, where we spent the evening hanging out poolside. We have another free day today. We decided to start the day at Xunantunich. Xunantunich is another Mayan site located near the city of San Ignacio. This time, instead of an hours-long dirt road, we had to take a car ferry across the Mopan River to reach the ancient city. Even though it was a short walk from the entrance station to the ruins, we still managed to find a Yucatan woodpecker along the way. Much like everywhere else we visited so far, there weren't very many other people at Xunantunich. It had seemed like a bit of a gamble when I booked us a trip to Belize during the rainy season, but in this case the risk paid off. We barely experienced any rain, and it almost felt like we were the only tourists in the entire country. We climbed to the top of the main pyramid, El Castillo, and the guys seemed to have tapped into some heat-resistant energy reserve that I'm completely unable to access. Yeah, I'm not running. But the trudge up the tall steps was totally worth it for the view at the top. El Castillo is the second tallest man-made structure in Belize, after Caracol's Sky Palace, and we could see miles of green forest in every direction. This white line is the Guatemalan border. Spiny-tailed iguanas use the pyramid stones to hide in plain sight, and on our way back down, we ran into this colony of stingless bees. After crossing back over the river, we drove out of the city in search of a hike I'd found on all trails. We encountered a white-nosed coati right at the trailhead. Alright, we're setting off on the Black Rock Lodge summit hike. It's a pretty short hike, but it's got a bit of elevation gain, and it is very hot out, so I imagine it's going to be slow going. This hike ended up being a bit of a slog. I could have handled the 1,400 feet of elevation gain, or I could have handled the heat, but the combination of the two made for a pretty miserable uphill battle. Still, I tried to pay attention to neat critters along the trail anyway. There's a couple of howler monkeys in the distance. I just tried to get a recording of the sound, so we'll see if that comes out. Oh my gosh, we made it. The summit view was nice, but the real best view of the hike came on the way back down at the Riverview Loop, where we saw rolling hilltops towering above the Macaw River. Shortly after leaving the Riverview, I made the classic horror movie mistake of splitting up with the rest of the group. The other three guys just went down another hill to go look at a cave. I decided to skip out on that one. I'm just sitting alone in the jungle now, just waiting for them to come back. That is the hill that I said no to. It probably doesn't look like much on this video, and honestly, it probably isn't much. I'm just done with it. I am hoping that this is not the moment a jaguar decides to show up. After waiting for a half hour, I started to worry about the other three, so I boldly tromped down the hill to mount a heroic rescue. Gosh, these guys are actually taking so long that I decided to go down after all. Yep, it's a cave, all right. These guys apparently crawled in there. They're nowhere to be seen. Here's all of their stuff. I really hope they know how to get back. I can't even hear them. Okay, I'm getting kind of worried, so I guess I'm going into the cave. I had to crawl through this tunnel to get inside, which did not feel great because I was wearing shorts. Why do they do this to me? The ground is covered in rocks and I'm wearing short pants. Right when I decided I was worried enough to go in after them, now I can hear them. So I guess everybody's okay. Yeah, I can hear them talking, but the chamber that I just went into just ended, so I still have no idea where they are. And a bat just flew in my face. Just then, they emerged from another little tunnel that I hadn't noticed yet. They're alive! After that, it was an easy hike back down to the lodge, where we were able to take a swim at their riverside beach. I haven't jumped off a rope swing like this since I was a preteen, so this was a lot of fun, and it felt so good to rinse off after that sweaty hike. Vince, Bonnie, and David went in search of more stuff to jump off of. But I was more interested in trying to film a couple of social flycatchers. We drove home under the pastel colors of a lovely sunset and got to bed as soon as possible. It's like 4:30 in the morning. We got up really early because we are headed to Placencia today. We have a 9 a.m. tour. We need to be there a bit early. And it's a 3-hour drive, but hopefully it will be worth it because the point of this tour is to try to find manatees. I was able to sleep for most of the ride to Placencia and woke up to find that it was far different from the Cayo district. We drove into town where we met up with our tour operator, Captain Jax. Once aboard our boat, our captain sped off towards a mangrove forest and eventually stopped in the town of Monkey River. In Monkey River, we picked up a local guide named Raymond, who helped us look for wildlife.
We have a lot of birds, we have iguanas, we have turtles, we have crocodiles. Little wild animals too beside the monkey. We're more guaranteed them at night.
We found a crocodile right away, then this basilisk lizard, which is capable of running on water for short distances. Raymond also led us on a guided hike through the forest.
These fruits, called cahoon, these trees, cahoon. When they leave, they use it for the roof of the house. Like these fruits, when it's young, you could eat them.
We were looking at some crabs when we heard a familiar howling sound echoing through the trees. Right before we had to get back on the boat, we found this porcupine. On our way back to Monkey River, we saw a tropical slider, a juvenile tiger heron, and another American crocodile. This was particularly cool for me because I've seen American alligators and black caimans, but this was my first time seeing a crocodile in the Americas. After leaving Monkey River, it was time to look for manatees. We rode out to the manatee preserve, but unfortunately, they were not in the mood to make an appearance. We saw really brief glimpses of a couple of them far in the distance, but never managed to get up close, and eventually we had to give up and head back to Placencia. Since it would be night by the time we got back to our lodge, we decided to check out a beach before leaving Placencia. We turned a coconut into a football, which was more entertaining than you might expect. Hey, Vince. When we finally got back to the lodge, we went for another swim in the pool before turning in for the night. It's officially our last day here in Belize. We ended up booking a last-minute tour. That's going to be about midday, so before that, we're going to check out a butterfly farm. Okay, none of us were expecting to get as much enjoyment out of this place as we did. It's called the Green Hills Butterfly Ranch, and it has a couple of large butterfly flight houses that are fluttering with many different species of colorful butterflies. There are also hiking trails running through the property, and there were a lot of wild animals nearby. I only managed to capture a few things on video, like a huge grasshopper, an agouti, and a gray-necked wood rail. We also saw collared aracaris, Yucatan woodpeckers, social flycatchers, and several species of bird that I couldn't identify. And David and I saw a peccary, which is a pig-like animal. Back at the ranch's visitor center, we watched their hummingbird feeders until we absolutely had to get on the road if we were going to make it in time for our next tour. The tour was at Dark Night Cave Tubing Adventures, and we had a bit of trouble finding the place, but eventually we got back on track. We're trying to We finally managed to find someone who could lead us to the right location, and then we set off on a canopy tour. Our guide led us along these tall swing bridges, stopping to teach us about local flora along the way.
I like to do this, right? The skin here on the side, and then chew it. They are sour, but if you are dehydrated, this is the plant that will help you. If I get touched by a leaf there, could go like 3 days with those bumps.
The longest bridge was especially cool, and it wobbled a lot when we got out to the center. Back on the ground, we picked out tubes and began our journey underground into our final cave of the trip. We learned about how the Mayans used to use the caves as we floated through the water in darkness. We got to get off of our tubes to check out this area where water droplets are gathered on the cave ceiling. This is the beginning of the process of stalactite formation. After we left the cave, we got to get out and swim back to our starting point. We decided to revisit one of our favorite spots with our last few hours of daylight. We are really coming to the end of our last day here in Belize. We made one final stop back to Rio on Pools in Mountain Pine Ridge. This was one of our favorite swimming holes the first day we came out this direction. It's super beautiful. Last time we were here, the weather was a bit hotter and there were a lot of people. And this time it is literally just us, which has been kind of surprising for our entire stay here in Belize, how few other tourists there are. I know it is the off season, but the weather has been phenomenal. One thing that is pretty neat about Mountain Pine Ridge, which you can probably tell from the name, is that up here in these mountains, the forest is actually a pine forest, whereas everywhere else we've been, it's been tropical rainforest. So you've got a lot of different vegetation up here than from what we've been seeing the rest of the trip. That's pretty much it. We're gonna go back to the Mariposa Lodge and pack. Tomorrow, we're pretty much just driving back to Belize City and getting on a plane. Yeah, that's a wrap. The next day, we drove all the way back to Belize City, where we boarded our flight back to the US. Our time in Belize was officially over, but I felt satisfied knowing that we'd managed to see a large part of this beautiful country during our stay. Belize definitely has a lot to offer the adventurous traveler, and our journey was wonderful from start to finish.
I miss you, Dave. Today's YouTube video is going to be like 60% ants.
That's a Dorito.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of our chips.
I dropped it.
Dude, you're going to feed that colony of ants for ages.
They're like, that's the mother lode.
All right, go ahead. I don't even understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Proving how much I gained weight.
You're gonna disown me?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.